Hi guys, I hope everyone's doing fine today. A few years ago, I was in Saint Jérôme and I was with a friend who was visiting our building that we had purchased as a church there. And some of you have heard the story of we purchased this old theater that already also had been a nightclub and that had been empty for many years, and we had bought it. And so that person was walking with me in the building, and he was looking everywhere in amazement, and he was looking down at the floor where we could still see Rex nightclub, um, and I saw that he was like profoundly shaken by all this, and I was like, "Hey, what's happening?" And he said, "You won't believe this, but I grew up here in Saint Jérôme, and I became a Christian when I was in my teen years." And he said, me and my friend, we were full of zeal for Jesus, and we would walk in our city and pray often, like once a week or twice a week. We'd do that. And he said, at the time when we did this, the Rex nightclub had a horrible reputation in our town. It was full of drugs, of crime. There has been some murders there, some really bad things happening, harassment of all kinds. And he said we would walk down the street of downtown Saint Jerome and we would pray that God would shut down that nightclub and bring this building to bring glory to him, transform it to bring glory to him. And he said, now I'm standing with you, and this is now a church where the good news of Jesus is proclaimed. That's crazy. And I said, wow, that is crazy. I couldn't believe it. And you know what? I'm so grateful because my friend was practicing a form of prayer that we don't often hear about. In a way, it's called warfare prayer. It's warfare because in prayer we wage war against the evil in our around us and the evil also inside us. And so that's what Jesus talks about in the second half of the Lord's Prayer. And I want to read that with you in Matthew 6. Remember, we were there last week. We talked about the first half, which is all about worshiping God, his worth, his holiness, his kingdom, his will. And now on the second half, we talk more about ourselves and our needs for daily bread, but also for warfare. And this is what we'll see in verse 11. Jesus goes on and says, give us today our daily bread. This is how we should pray. Give us today our daily bread. Daily. So that means it's a prayer that should be prayed every day. Then in verse 12, we get into warfare, because we've talked about asking already, asking for our needs. But verse 12 is about warfare. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Recognizing that we have debts. We have offenses that we've done. We've been impatient. We've been whining, worrying. We've been unforgiving. We've been hoarding. And then verse 12 is, do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. There's evil outside of us. So how do we wage warfare prayer? Well, we saw in verse 12, it's about asking God's forgiveness, or another word for this is confess. Confess what I have done wrong. The Greek word for confess is homologeo. Homo meaning same, logeo meaning word, same word. Confessing is saying the same thing that God is saying. It's recognizing that, yeah, God, I see the same thing you see. And so my sin, I see it the same way you see it. Have you ever had someone apologize to you and saying, yeah, I did this wrong, but you can sense like they don't really understand how much it hurt you. Like it's flippant to them. Like, I'm sorry that I said that. And you're like, I can't feel like I can forgive them because they haven't recognized they're wrong. They haven't confessed, said the same thing I'm saying. They don't see it the same way I see it. You know, someone steps on one of your toys or one of your phone or something, and they're like, sorry. And you're like, man, you almost destroyed this. You don't realize how much it's costly. Jesus saying, when you pray, you need to confess. Say the same thing as God about your sin. Something like, God, I recognize what I did when I whined, when I treated others unfairly, when I got angry, lashed out at other people. that was wrong. And you say it's wrong, and I confess it's wrong. And this confession is very freeing. There's a verse in Psalm 32 that talks about when we don't confess our sin, this is what happens. When I kept silent, David says in Psalm 32:3, my bones became brittle from my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me, my strength was drained, as in the summer's heat. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not conceal my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. In prayer, we battle against the sin within by confession. We also battle against the sin and evil around us by declaration. Another kind of prayer is declaration, declaring what is true. Because you see, this when Jesus says that we need to pray to God, asking him, do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. The evil one is Satan. Evil entities called demons exist and want to bring you down. And the way they want to bring you down is by inserting lies in your heart. Lies like, I wrote down a few that I know are true of me sometimes. I believe those lies. Something like, if I do everything the way others want me to do it, I will be loved. If I get everything under control, I will be safe. If I don't mess up and I do everything perfectly, I will be treated fairly. Those are all lies. The good news of Jesus is, however good you try to be, you'll never be loved because of your actions. You're loved because of Jesus' actions. He gave his life for you. You have great worth because the God of the universe gave his life for you. That's good news of Jesus. That's a gospel. And even if you do everything perfectly, you might never be treated fairly. Jesus was treated unfairly, even though he did everything perfectly, so that you could be treated by grace, by God, in grace by God. Also, even if you get everything under control, things might go very, very wrong. You might not be safe, but you know that you are safe because God is your Father. He will defend you. And so in warfare prayer, I also need to wage war against Satan's lie. And this is how I do it. I declare, and I practice that, maybe not every morning, but very often. I will say something like this: God, I know I have planted my feet in the lie that if I do everything others expect of me, I will be loved. And I know that is not true. And right now, I want to stand my feet in the good news of Jesus. And I know that I have worth because of your death and resurrection for me. And that is how you wage battle against Satan's lies. You might think it's a little complex and serious, but believe me, start practicing this right now. You will be strong. You will be victorious in so many ways. So I'd like for us to do this tonight. And I encourage you to identify, where is it that you have planted your feet? Is it in fear? Is it in approval of others? Is it in control? Being perfect? So take your feet and in prayer, put them back in the gospel of Jesus, saying, now, Jesus, I want to stand in your love, in your security, in your power, and in your justice and protection. So do this right now. Do warfare prayer, just like Jesus told us to do. Thank you. We'll talk not next week, because it's community groups, but in 2 weeks. Bye.